I have no way of controlling the ISO for this, so it looks like we're just gonna have to roll with some of the worst lighting I've ever seen in my life. Today I learned a very valuable lesson about Amber and how strong she really is. I actually just had her over my neck, and, well, it's not like she was strangling me or anything, but it actually was, like, pressure, to say the least. And she's not fully grown yet. She's not gonna be fully grown for, like, another year. So, while she's still growing, I think it's best from this point onwards to just not have her around my neck anymore. How we doing today, guys? Today I wanted to talk about something that was just like randomly popping up in my head. That being the topic of genetic engineering with animals and what lines we should be crossing, or what lines we should put before actually doing anything. I was watching these really like ridiculous sci-fi movies like Sharktopus and like Dino Croc and Super Gator and stuff like that. I grew up watching stuff like that, and it's all just schlock. Like, it's terrible, and it's not, there's no intention behind any of these films aside from just making schlock. That being said, though, there is a common theme with a lot of these monster movies, not even just the Sci-Fi Channel ones, but like a lot of these movies in general. And that common theme is usually around the fact that these animals, if they're genetically made in a lab, they're usually made out to be these abominations, you know, these movie monsters. And there's not really anything beyond that. If they're made via genetic engineering, you can almost guarantee that they're just this disgusting abomination that wants to, like, kill everyone. And there's more serious movies that tackle this topic as well, which I will get into. But, like, use, like, Rampage, the 2018 blockbuster with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. They had a very, very small scene regarding genetic engineering and, like, stupid crap like that.
You familiar with CRISPR?
Yeah, genetic engineering.
It's more like genetic editing. Growth rate of a blue whale, the strength of a rhinoceros beetle, the speed of a cheetah.
And you get one confused gorilla that could take down a grizzly.
And that was basically the excuse for why the monsters were monsters. But what made it funny was that it turned them into monsters instead of just weird animals, which is probably a lot closer to what the reality would be. The thing about genetic engineering with animals is that I'd actually argue that a lot of the times it's kind of valid, and sometimes I would say it's completely justified. I'm gonna go over some examples of what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and sort of the gray area, and discussing where we should draw the line. I'm gonna start off by discussing something that a lot of people haven't really heard about in a while, and that was the Chickenasaurus project. Trey the Explainer did a really good job of explaining the ethics of this project, and I'm gonna link that video in the description. But to summarize, paleontologist... Fuck, what was his name? God damn it. Jack Horner. Yeah. This project was started by paleontologist Jack Horner, and he basically had the idea of taking the genetics of a chicken and sort of editing it to an extent to make it look more like a dinosaur. And it was called the Chickenasaurus project. This was a project that was going to be given a lot of funding, a lot of time, energy, resources in general just being poured into this. At face value, right, it seems completely harmless. Like, yeah, why not? Let's make a chicken that looks like a dinosaur. There's a lot more to it, though, than what you might think of it at a surface level. One of the main ones being the fact that a chicken already is a dinosaur. The fact that a chicken... and all birds in general, by the way, are already dinosaurs. You don't have to make a dinosaur anymore because a chicken is a dinosaur. So then that kind of begs the question as to, like, why exactly do you want to make this project? With Jack Horner, he wanted to basically just have it be a display animal, an educational ambassador for the Chickenasaurus species. He literally just wants to have it to look cool and probably profit off. So already you can see that there's a bit of a red flag with that. The sole reason of this animal being created was for spectacle, just making it look cool. And if an animal is being, like, newly created for cynical purposes, you can imagine that more cynical things being done to or with the animal would happen down the line. The whole campaign for it was a lot of just like, oh yeah, we're gonna reverse evolution to make it look more like its dinosaur ancestors. And that's kind of weird to me because how exactly are you supposed to do that? I ain't a scientist, I ain't. But how are you supposed to do that? They've been having trouble with it. Instead of doing the genetic, like, reversing of evolution, they're kind of just throwing in different traits from different animals to make the chicken look more like a dinosaur. So in the end, not only will this chicken not be a dinosaur at all, but it'll be kind of a Frankenstein of, like, a lot of different animals just to kind of make it look that way for, again, spectacle. Prioritizing spectacle when it comes to anything regarding animals is almost always a terrible idea. I recently just quit my last job. I am not going to say the name of the company that I worked for because I don't want to get sued. They took pretty awful care of their animals. Not at fault of any of the employees. It was always corporate, the corporation, and management to an extent. To a big extent. The prioritization of spectacle over the animal welfare took a toll on not only the employees, but obviously the animals as well. There were a lot that just died, like a lot. And unfortunately, this was the norm for the company. There were people there who were working for like years and years that couldn't make any change. So it just made me feel helpless, and I didn't want to work there anymore. And I was gone like 5 minutes later. For example, right, like we couldn't have any toys in the cat enclosure that didn't fit the aesthetic of the enclosure. Yeah. There was an example that Trey mentioned in his video about putting I believe it was a reticulated python vertebrae column into a mouse. And it was done successfully. But it wasn't done successfully for the mouse. And what I mean by that was that the mouse was paralyzed because of this python vertebrae that it had in its body. So you could imagine it lived a pretty miserable life. And that was just one change that they made to this mouse. There is an entire cocktail of animals that they want to put inside that fucking chicken. So you could imagine what kind of horrible defects. There is a huge chance that they're not telling you about, that this chicken can literally just die before it's even born, or before it even hatches out of the egg. So I also do not support the Chickenasaurus project. I think it's really stupid. I think if you want to teach people about the relation between chickens and dinosaurs, you could use a chicken instead of a really weird looking chicken. It's not going to be natural. It's not going to be too accurate to what dinosaurs would look like because you're not using anything with dinosaurs. You're using completely different animals just to make it resemble the features that are commonly depicted with dinosaurs. And in the end, it might not even be alive. It might look like a complete abomination like you're seeing in these movies. And that's how much money, how much time, how much effort and research just completely flushed down the drain. That would be an example of something we shouldn't be doing. An example of something that we could be doing, and in my opinion, what we should be doing, would be resurrecting extinct animals that were not extinct due to natural reasons. When I say natural, I mean like humans, people. I think the best example of this would be the thylacine from Australia and Tasmania. Also called the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine was a marsupial related to quolls and Tasmanian devils. They basically served as the apex predator of the area before dingoes were introduced. And this animal was hunted to extinction by farmers in Australia and Tasmania because they thought that the thylacines were killing their livestock. Not only is that not a justifiable reason to hunt an animal to extinction, it wasn't even them. The real animals that were killing their livestock were dingoes. Dingoes. In case you don't know, dingoes are literally just dogs that settlers brought over. So they're basically invasive, and they're only really the apex predator, and they're only ecologically beneficial because we killed off the other animal that was occupying that niche. Thylacines were given probably the worst hand in nature. If anyone can think of a worse example, then feel free to let me know in the comments. The last surviving thylacine was a specimen in a zoo named Benjamin, and the kicker is that they were declared an endangered species 1 week before the last specimen died. And to make matters worse, he died from human incompetence from the zoo. We still have specimens with like actually good DNA because this species died off not too long ago. It was very recent. Benjamin died in 1949. I think reintroducing this animal and giving them a second chance is a really good idea. It's going to educate people a lot on conservation in general and helping to emphasize the importance of it. They still do fit in this world compared to something like a mammoth. People are also trying to bring back mammoths. I don't agree with this. A big reason why I don't agree with this is simply because mammoths no longer fit in this world. In a mixture of climate change and human civilization being literally everywhere, the world just isn't big enough for mammoths anymore. They came from an era where the world was a lot colder and a lot more wild than it is today. And if they were to be brought back, they would probably only exist in captivity, which in my opinion just doesn't cut it. Again, bringing back an animal for purely spectacle purposes is just a terrible idea. They wouldn't fit in the natural order, and if they would, there just wouldn't be enough room for them. Not to mention, the whole process of bringing them back would be to mix the DNA of their closest relatives, which I believe are the Asian elephants. So not only would it be not ready for the environment that it would be brought back into, not only would it only exist in captivity for spectacle purposes, but it wouldn't even be a real pure mammoth. It would just be a mammoth Asian elephant hybrid, which I guess is cool if we had infinite money. Again, these things cost a lot of time and effort and money and research, and would it be worth it? I'd argue no. I think there's a lot of different genetic editing projects that we should be working on and prioritizing over bringing back mammoths for spectacle. They did go extinct because of us, but that was a very, very long time ago. The world is a lot hotter and a lot more civilized. We can't afford to have mammoths running around. There are a few examples that are kind of in the gray area with animals that we can or shouldn't resurrect, at least for me anyways. Two of those examples I can think of are birds. One is the dodo bird, the other is the moa. The moa is a species of ratite that was even bigger than ostriches. They weren't the biggest ever though. The biggest was the elephant bird. The moas were hunted to extinction by humans. And it was pretty recently, I'd say. I think it was about 600 years ago. So it was pretty recent. They also lived in an area where they could actually still thrive. The planet hadn't changed too much, at least not compared to the mammoths. And the same is kind of said about dodo birds. They lived on a very small island near Madagascar, I believe. They had no natural predators, though I would argue more for bringing back the moa than the dodo bird, because the dodo birds didn't really serve much of an ecological purpose. The reason they were called dodo birds, it wasn't because they were stupid, but because they had no natural predators. So when settlers came over and annihilated them, we just called them stupid for trusting people. Animals that were completely hunted to extinction by humans within the last few hundred years, I think deserve a second chance. Thylacine being the utmost priority among them. If you can think of any better example that fits this criteria, please feel free to educate me. But for stupid, gimmicky projects like that of the Chickenasaurus, I cannot ever see myself supporting, because there's so much money and time and research that would be dedicated to these projects. Money and time and research that would be better spent doing something a lot more productive. But before any of that, I'd actually say instead of bringing back extinct species, we should probably focus on what we have right now and then go and focus on them. And by what we have right now, I mean the animals that are critically endangered and serve environmental purposes, like an ecological role, I mean. There are animals that we have poured hundreds of millions of dollars into the conservation of when they should just be extinct, because they serve no ecological purpose, and they would probably be extinct with or without humans. I personally believe that the money is better spent helping animals that actually serve a purpose. The thing about gene editing is that it's kind of a loose term, and I'm not going to really define it for you, but there is a lot of debate about whether people should do anything even remotely like this at all. I'm sure a lot of you have seen Jurassic Park. this blanket argument of don't play God, rape of the natural world, you know, shit like that. What you gotta realize is that Jurassic Park was made in 1993. The things that were very fantasy, or at least like kind of in the distance at the time, is now pretty real. I'd argue a lot of this stuff can be useful for a lot of different species, even the ones that aren't already extinct. For example, cheetahs, who kind of need help right now. They are the most endangered of Africa's big cats. A majority of them, if not all of them, are inbred because of a bottleneck on top of all the problems that they have today. There's also the existence of coyotes, wolves, and dogs, with how a majority of the wolves in the United States are actually part coyote and part dog. And I believe it is the other way around with coyotes as well. Putting on this like blanket argument of just don't play God kind of hinders a lot of what we can do with science, but there definitely should be a line that we draw. That'll do it for this video today, folks. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know any of your opinions on the ethics of genetic engineering with animals in the comments below, as well as what other species you might think should be resurrected. Amber's getting a little fat, so I'm trying to work on supplementing her diet a little bit and giving her a little bit more space to climb around and exercise. I recently just got a 4x2x2 enclosure from Dubia.com, not sponsored. I am excited to build that and put that all together for you guys for a little Operation Amber video. But until then, that'll have to do for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. We are reaching numbers that I've never even seen before, and I'm very thankful for that. I am. Have a good night, folks.